The crunch of snow beneath my boots was the only sound in the vast wilderness until it wasn't. I froze mid-step, my breath catching in my throat as I heard it, a low, guttural growl echoing through the pine trees. The full moon cast long, twisted shadows across the pristine snow of the Montana backcountry, turning the familiar landscape into something sinister and alien. This was supposed to be a routine overnight trip to check my research equipment. As a wildlife biologist studying migration patterns, I'd made this journey dozens of times. But tonight was different. Tonight, something was hunting me. My name is Benjamin Cooper, and until 3 hours ago, I didn't believe in monsters. The temperature had plummeted after sunset, easily reaching 15 below zero. My research cabin was still 5 miles away, and the satellite phone in my pack had died mysteriously, despite being fully charged when I left my truck. Another growl, closer this time. My hand tightened around the hunting knife at my belt, the only weapon I carried. I'd never needed more than that in these woods before. Just a wolf, I whispered to myself, my words forming clouds in the frigid air. Just a normal, natural wolf. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. No wolf made sounds like that. No wolf stalked a human with such deliberate, calculated movements. I quickened my pace, trying to maintain a path toward the cabin while watching the tree line. The forest was too quiet now. No small animals, no rustling branches, just the sound of my own labored breathing and the pounding of my heart. Then I saw it. Just a flash of movement between two pines. Something massive, moving with impossible speed on all fours. It was only visible for a second before vanishing into the darkness. But that second was enough to send ice through my veins that had nothing to do with the Montana winter. It wasn't a wolf. It was too big, too wrong. The proportions were distorted, like someone had taken a wolf and stretched it, warped it into something that shouldn't exist. I ran. Professional dignity be damned. I ran like prey, because that's exactly what I was. The trees blurred past me as I sprinted through the snow, my heavy winter gear making each step a struggle. My lungs burned from the exertion and the cold air. I knew running was probably the worst thing I could do. It would only trigger the predator instinct, but rational thought had abandoned me. A howl split the night, a sound that began like a wolf's call, but twisted halfway through into something almost human, a sound that shouldn't be possible from any creature's throat. I stumbled, catching myself against a tree trunk, trying desperately to orient myself. The cabin couldn't be far now. If I could just make it there, barricade myself inside until morning. The attack came without warning. One moment I was alone, the next I was thrown face first into the snow with crushing weight on my back. Hot breath steamed against my neck, carrying the metallic stench of blood and decay. Claws dug into my shoulders through my heavy jacket. Somehow, driven by pure survival instinct, I managed to twist and kick, momentarily dislodging the creature. I caught a glimpse of it as I scrambled backward, towering on two legs now, at least 7 feet tall, covered in matted dark fur. Its face was the most horrifying part, caught between wolf and human, with intelligent eyes that reflected the moonlight with an unnatural amber glow. It lunged again, but this time I was ready. I swung my knife wildly, connecting with something solid. A howl of pain erupted from the creature as it recoiled, black liquid dripping from a gash in its chest. That momentary advantage was all I needed. I turned and ran again, no longer caring about direction, just desperate to put distance between myself and the monster. My mind raced through everything I knew about wolves, about predators, but nothing in my scientific training had prepared me for this. I burst through the trees into a small clearing and saw it. My cabin, a dark silhouette against the starlit sky. Relief flooded through me as I staggered toward it, fumbling in my pocket for the keys. The howl came again, closer now. It was following my trail. My fingers, numb with cold and fear, struggled with the lock. Come on, I muttered frantically, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds at the dark tree line. The lock finally gave way, and I practically fell inside, slamming the door behind me and throwing the deadbolt. I backed away from the door, knife still clutched in my shaking hand. The cabin was freezing. I hadn't been here in weeks. I needed light, heat, weapons. I fumbled for matches to light the oil lamps, casting the small one-room structure in a warm glow that should have been comforting but only made the shadows deeper. Something heavy crashed against the door, and I jumped back with a startled cry. The wooden frame groaned under the impact but held firm. "Go away," I shouted, knowing how pathetic and useless the words were, even as they left my mouth. A low, rumbling sound came from outside. Not quite a growl, not quite laughter. Then silence. I moved to the window, carefully peering out. The moonlit clearing was empty. No massive shape, no glowing eyes. But I knew it was still out there, waiting. My research equipment was scattered around the cabin. Cameras, tracking devices, data loggers, but nothing that could serve as a weapon. I did have an emergency kit with a flare gun, though. I found it in a cabinet and loaded it with trembling hands. As I worked to build a fire in the small wood stove, my mind raced through possible explanations. I'm a scientist. I deal in facts, in things that can be measured and documented. But what I'd seen defied scientific explanation. The legends of the Blackfeet and Salish tribes came back to me. Stories I'd dismissed as superstition when the local guides had shared them. Tales of skinwalkers and shapeshifters that hunted in these mountains. Now those dismissals felt like arrogance. A scratching sound at the window made me whirl around, flare gun raised. Nothing visible, but the scratching continued, slow, deliberate, almost like it was taunting me. I moved to the radio I kept for emergencies and tried to make contact with anyone. Static was my only answer. I was truly alone. Hours passed in a strange, tense standoff. Occasionally there would be sounds outside. Scratching, heavy footsteps in the snow. That terrible not-quite wolf howl. But the creature never launched a full attack on the cabin. It was waiting me out. By 3 a.m., exhaustion was taking its toll. I hadn't slept in nearly 24 hours, and the adrenaline could only keep me alert for so long. My eyes kept drifting closed despite my best efforts. A crash from the back of the cabin jolted me awake. The small window there had shattered, and a massive clawed hand was reaching through, grasping at the air. I fired the flare gun without hesitation. The red phosphorus illuminated the night as it shot through the broken window. A shriek of pain followed, high-pitched and agonized, and the hand withdrew. The brief flash of light had shown me something else too. Other dark shapes moving at the edge of the clearing. More than one. There were multiple creatures out there. That realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't facing a single predator. I was surrounded by a pack. My chances of surviving until dawn suddenly seemed much slimmer. I barricaded the broken window as best I could with a shelf and gathered everything flammable I could find. Fire was my only advantage. These creatures, whatever they were, seemed to fear it. Another crash, this time at the door. Wood splintered as something massive slammed against it repeatedly. The deadbolt was bending, the frame cracking. In desperation, I overturned the wood stove, spilling burning logs onto the floor. It was a crazy, dangerous move, but I needed a distraction, a barrier. The fire caught quickly on the dry wooden floorboards. Too quickly. I hadn't thought this through. Smoke began to fill the cabin as I backed toward the rear window, my only possible escape route now. With one final tremendous crash, the door gave way. The creature filled the door frame, even larger than I remembered, its massive shoulders hunched to fit through the human-sized opening. Behind it, I could see other shapes, other sets of glowing eyes. The fire was spreading between us, and the creature hesitated at the threshold, growling. Those two intelligent eyes fixed on me with hatred and hunger. I made my choice. I grabbed my pack and knife and launched myself through the rear window, feeling glass cut my face and hands as I tumbled into the snow outside. I didn't look back as I ran into the forest. The howls behind me and the orange glow of my burning cabin were all the motivation I needed to keep moving. The path ahead led deeper into the wilderness, away from my truck, away from civilization. But it was my only option. I ran until my lungs felt like they would burst, until my legs threatened to give out beneath me. When I finally stopped, gasping for breath beside a frozen stream, I realized I hadn't heard any pursuit for some time. Had the fire distracted them? Or were they still tracking me, just more carefully now? I needed to find shelter before hypothermia set in. My clothing was torn from my escape through the window, and blood from numerous small cuts was freezing against my skin. In the distance, barely visible in the moonlight, I spotted what looked like an old mining entrance carved into the mountainside. It wasn't ideal, but it would provide some protection from the elements and from watching eyes. The entrance was half collapsed, requiring me to squeeze through a narrow opening. Inside, the temperature was marginally warmer, and the darkness absolute. I fumbled with my pack, finding a small emergency flashlight. Its beam revealed a tunnel extending back into the mountain, old support beams sagging with age. The air was stale but breathable. I moved deeper into the mine, wanting to put as much solid rock between myself and the entrance as possible. After about 50 yards, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber that appeared to have been used as some sort of operations area. Rusted equipment littered the floor, and an old lantern sat on what had once been a desk. Remarkably, the lantern still had oil in it. I lit it, providing better illumination than my failing flashlight. The shadows it cast against the rock walls were unsettling, but it was better than darkness. As I tried to settle in, to catch my breath and plan my next move, I noticed something strange about the far wall of the chamber. It was covered in markings, not mining notes or survey markers, but elaborate carvings that appeared incredibly old. I approached cautiously, holding the lantern higher. The carvings depicted human-like figures transforming into wolves, scenes of hunting and ritual sacrifice. In the center was a larger figure, half man, half wolf, surrounded by human figures in poses of worship. My blood ran cold as I realized what I was looking at. This wasn't a mine at all, or at least it hadn't started as one. This was something much older, some kind of shrine or ceremonial site. A sound from the tunnel behind me made me whirl around, a scraping noise like claws on stone. They had found me. I looked around frantically for another exit and spotted a narrow passage leading deeper into the mountain. Without hesitation, I squeezed into it, the lantern held awkwardly in front of me. The passage twisted and turned, sometimes so narrow I had to turn sideways to progress. The air grew colder, damper. I could hear water dripping somewhere ahead. The howl that echoed through the stone corridor behind me was distorted by the confined space, somehow made more terrifying by the strange acoustics. It was closer than I'd thought. The passage suddenly opened into another chamber, this one natural rather than man-made. A small underground stream ran across the floor, and somewhere far above, a crack in the ceiling let in a thin shaft of moonlight. I had no time to appreciate the strange beauty of the place. The sounds of pursuit were growing louder. I waded across the shallow stream, looking for another way out. There, on the far side, another passage. I moved toward it, hope rising in my chest. A low growl stopped me in my tracks. From the very passage I'd been heading toward, a pair of amber eyes gleamed in the darkness. They had circled around somehow, cutting off my escape. I backed away, splashing through the stream again, only to hear more growls from the passage I'd entered through. I was trapped. The creature from the new passage emerged first, not the same one that had attacked me initially. This one was smaller, with reddish-brown fur instead of black. It moved with the same unnatural grace. Part wolf, part human, entirely predator. I raised my knife, backing against the chamber wall as it stalked closer. The lantern light reflected off its wet fangs as its muzzle pulled back in what could only be described as a grin. More shapes appeared from both passageways. 5, 6, 7 of them. Different sizes, different colorations, but all with the same terrible melding of wolf and human features. They moved into the chamber in a coordinated semicircle, cutting off any possible retreat. The largest one, the black-furred monster that had attacked me at the cabin, pushed to the front of the pack. In the better light of the lantern, I could see details I'd missed before. Scars crisscrossing its muzzle, one ear partially torn away, and around its neck, incongruously, what appeared to be a very old, tarnished silver chain. It rose to its full height, towering over me, and did something I never expected. It spoke. Benjamin. The name came out distorted, as though formed by a mouth never meant for human speech, but unmistakable nonetheless. I nearly dropped the knife in shock. "How do you know my name?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The creature tilted its massive head, those amber eyes studying me with disturbing intelligence. "We know all who enter our territory," it growled, each word a struggle of articulation. "Your kind has been watching us, hunting us." "No," I protested, my scientific mind struggling to accept what was happening. "I'm a biologist. I study migration patterns of normal wolves. I didn't believe." A sound rumbled through the pack, a collective noise that might have been laughter. "Your disbelief changes nothing," the leader growled. "Your kind has always denied our existence until the moment of death." "What are you?" I asked, though I knew the answer already. "We are the first inhabitants of these mountains. We were here before your mines, before your roads and towns. We have been called many names by many peoples." "Werewolves," I said simply. The creature's muzzle twisted in what might have been a smile. "A human word. Inadequate." The pack was growing restless, edging closer, but their leader held up a massive clawed hand, and they stilled immediately. "Why are you talking to me?" I asked. "Why not just kill me like—" I trailed off, realizing something for the first time. "The other researchers, my colleagues who disappeared, that was you." "Some," the creature acknowledged. "Others were taken by the mountain itself. Your kind is fragile." "Then why am I still alive?" The leader approached, moving with that unsettling mixture of lupine grace and human posture. He loomed over me, his breath hot on my face. "You wounded me," he growled, indicating the gash on his chest where my knife had connected earlier. "Few have drawn my blood in the last century. It interests me. I don't understand." "Our numbers diminish," he said, gesturing to the pack. "Once we were hundreds, now barely a dozen. We need strength, new blood." A horrible realization dawned on me. "You want to convert me? Make me like you?" The leader's amber eyes seemed to glow brighter. "The change is a gift we bestow rarely. Most humans are unworthy, too weak to survive the transformation." "And you think I'm not?" My voice shook despite my attempt to sound brave. "We shall see." He stepped back, addressing the pack in a language I didn't understand, guttural sounds interspersed with growls. Two smaller werewolves approached me, and I raised my knife again, though I knew it was futile against so many. To my surprise, they didn't attack. Instead, they simply took positions on either side of me. "Come," the leader commanded, turning toward the passage I hadn't yet explored. "Your trial begins now. And if I refuse—" He looked back at me, and there was no humanity in his gaze now. "Then you die here, and we feed. Choose." Some choice. I lowered the knife slightly and nodded. "Lead on, then." The passage beyond was larger than the one I'd entered through, allowing us to walk almost upright. The pack surrounded me, some before, some behind, making escape impossible. We traveled deeper into the mountain, through winding tunnels that couldn't possibly have been created by human miners. These were older, carved by water and time, and occasionally modified by claws stronger than steel. I tried to memorize the route, but it was hopeless. Dozens of branching passages, sudden drops, narrow squeezes through which the werewolves flowed like living shadows. Finally, we emerged into a vast underground cavern that took my breath away. It must have been hundreds of feet across, with a ceiling lost in darkness above. A series of natural stone formations created terraces around a central depression, like some kind of primeval amphitheater. Most shocking of all was the evidence of habitation. Crude structures had been built against the walls, shelters made of stone, wood, and animal hides. Remnants of fires dotted the space, and what appeared to be storage areas held bundles of unknown contents. "Welcome," the leader growled, "to the den." Other werewolves appeared from the shelters, smaller ones, some very old judging by their graying fur, and even a few young ones that moved with puppy-like energy despite their monstrous appearance. "Your pack lives here," I said, trying to process what I was seeing. "Underground. We adapt," the leader replied simply. "Your kind forces us deeper each generation. Once all the mountains were our territory. Now we have this. He led me to the central depression, which I now saw was a perfect circle, its floor smooth stone worn by countless feet or paws. The trial circle, he announced, stepping into it and turning to face me. Enter. The pack had formed a ring around the circle, their eyes gleaming in the strange bioluminescent light that emanated from growths on the cavern walls. What's the trial? I asked, still clutching my pathetic knife. Survival, he growled, dawn to dusk. If you live, you may join us. And if I somehow manage to kill you instead? I couldn't believe I was even asking the question, but some desperate part of me needed to know all the options. That terrible laugh rumbled from his chest again. Then you would be our new leader, such is our law. He flexed his massive clawed hands. But you will not. I had no illusions about my chances. This creature was faster, stronger, and had been killing humans for possibly centuries. But dying fighting seemed better than whatever joining them entailed. I stepped into the circle, knife raised. Let's get this over with. The leader dropped to all fours, his shape seeming to flow and distort as he circled me. The pack began a rhythmic sound, not quite chanting, not quite howling, something between the two that raised the hair on my neck. The attack came with blinding speed. One moment he was 10 feet away, the next he was on me, claws slashing. I barely managed to twist away, feeling hot lines of pain across my ribs where he'd made contact. I slashed wildly with the knife, connecting with nothing but air. The leader was already circling again, moving with impossible quickness. The knife is a crutch, he growled. You will not need it in your new life. I'm keeping it for now. Thanks, I panted, trying to track his movements. He lunged again, this time catching my arm in his jaws. Pain exploded through me as teeth punctured my jacket and the flesh beneath. I cried out, stabbing downward with the knife, feeling it sink into the creature's shoulder. He released me with a roar of pain and anger, backing away. Black blood oozed from the new wound. The knife remained embedded in his flesh. I clutched my bleeding arm, backing away as far as the circle would allow. Without my weapon, I was truly defenseless now. The leader reached up with one massive hand and wrenched the knife from his shoulder, examining it for a moment before tossing it far out of the circle. First blood to you, he acknowledged, his voice a deeper growl now, tinged with respect and rage in equal measure. Second to me. There won't be a third, I said grimly. Just finish it. Instead of attacking again, the leader straightened, rising once more to his full height. Perhaps you are worthy after all, Benjamin Cooper, he said, my name strange in his inhuman mouth. Few have wounded me twice and lived. The chanting from the pack had stopped. A heavy silence filled the cavern. Tonight was to be a hunt, nothing more, the leader continued. But you have proven interesting. The pack has been without new blood for too long. He approached me slowly now, no longer in an attack posture. I backed away until I hit the edge of the circle, the pack members behind me growling warnings not to step out. The leader stopped directly in front of me, so close I could see every scar on his muzzle, every black hair in his matted coat. The gift can be given in many ways, he said. The bite is traditional, but lacks certainty. Too many humans die from it, their bodies rejecting the change. From around his neck, he removed the silver chain I'd noticed earlier. Hanging from it was a small vial containing dark liquid. This is rarer, more precious, the essence of our kind, distilled over centuries. His clawed hand held the vial before my eyes. One drop ensures the change. No risk of death, only transformation. And if I refuse? I asked again, already knowing the answer. Then we return to the trial, and you die as human prey. His amber eyes studied me. Why cling to your humanity, Benjamin? You have seen what we are. The strength, the freedom. Freedom? I laughed bitterly. Living in caves, hiding from humans? That's not freedom. We are not always as you see us now, he growled. The full moon reveals our true nature, but we can walk as humans do. We choose this form here, in our sanctuary. That information stunned me. These creatures could appear human, could be living among ordinary people undetected. How many of you are out there, I whispered. In towns, cities? Few, he admitted. Most prefer the wilderness. Human society is distasteful, but some serve as our eyes and ears. Some even mate with humans, though their offspring are unpredictable. My mind was reeling. The scientific implications alone were staggering. An entire subspecies, or separate species entirely, living alongside humanity undetected. Or perhaps not entirely undetected, given how many cultures around the world had werewolf legends. "Make your choice," the leader demanded, holding out the vial. "Join us or face death." I looked around at the ring of inhuman faces watching me. The choice seemed clear. Take the vial and live, or refuse and die. But something felt wrong about the leader's offer. "Why me?" I asked suddenly. "There must be stronger humans, better fighters. Why offer this to a wildlife biologist who just got lucky with a knife?" The leader's expression changed subtly, a flicker of something I couldn't interpret crossing his monstrous features. "Your scent," he said finally. "It is familiar to us." "That's impossible. I've never encountered anything like you before tonight." "Not you," he growled. "Your bloodline." A chill ran through me as I remembered my grandfather's stories. He'd been a trapper in these same mountains 60 years ago, with tales of strange encounters he'd never fully explain. We'd all assumed they were just colorful exaggerations. "My grandfather," I whispered. The leader nodded slowly. "He spared one of our young during a time of conflict, a debt unpaid until now." The revelation hit me hard. Had my grandfather knowingly encountered these creatures? Had he somehow recognized what they were and chosen mercy over violence? "The vial," the leader insisted, pushing it toward me. "Your decision now." Time seemed to slow as I stared at the dark liquid. Scientifically, what he was suggesting should be impossible. Species couldn't transmit their traits through some magical essence. And yet nothing about this night had followed the rules of science as I understood them. If I accepted, I would become like them. Not human anymore, but not quite wolf either. Something in between, belonging fully to neither world. If I refused, I would die here, hundreds of feet underground, my disappearance just another mystery of the Montana wilderness. My hand reached out, almost of its own accord, and took the vial. The leader's muzzle twisted in that not quite smile again. "Wise choice." "I haven't decided to drink it," I said quickly. "I just need time to think." A rumble of discontent ran through the pack, but the leader held up his hand again, silencing them. "Dawn approaches above," he said. "You have until the next moonrise to decide. After that, the trial resumes." It wasn't much time, but it was something. I nodded my agreement. The leader turned to two of the pack members and growled something in their strange language. They approached me and gestured toward one of the small shelters built against the cavern wall. "You will wait there," the leader instructed me. "Try to escape, and the pack will hunt you down. There is only one way out of the den, and it is always guarded." I clutched the vial tightly and allowed myself to be led to the shelter. It was crude but surprisingly comfortable inside. Furs lined the floor and walls, keeping out the cave's chill. A small oil lamp provided dim light. Once inside, my guards took positions outside the entrance, their massive shadows visible through the hide covering that served as a door. Alone for the first time in hours, I sank down onto the furs, exhaustion threatening to overcome me. My arm throbbed where the leader had bitten me, and the claw marks across my ribs burned with each breath. I examined the vial in the lamplight. The liquid inside was darker than blood, almost black, with a strange iridescence that caught the light in ways that seemed to defy physics. The rational part of my mind, the scientist, was still trying to process everything I'd seen. Werewolves were supposed to be myth, folklore born from fear of wolves in the wilderness. Yet here I was, deep underground in their lair, holding what they claimed was the essence of their transformation. What would happen if I drank it? Would I truly become like them? Or was this some elaborate trick, perhaps a poison to give me a merciful death, rather than being torn apart in their trial? And what about the leader's claim that they could appear human? If that was true, what was to stop me from returning to civilization after the transformation? I could continue my research, perhaps even study these creatures scientifically from the inside. But would I still be me after such a change? Would Benjamin Cooper, wildlife biologist, still exist in the mind of a werewolf? Or would something more primal take over, erasing what made me human? These questions chased each other through my mind as exhaustion finally claimed me. I fell into a fitful sleep, the vial clutched tightly in my hand. I dreamed of running through the forest on all fours, the sense of the wilderness sharper and more vivid than I'd ever experienced. The night no barrier to my vision. In the dream, I was powerful, fearless, part of something ancient and magnificent. I woke with a start, disoriented in the dim light of the shelter. How long had I slept? There was no way to tell time down here, cut off from the sun and stars. My wounds had stopped bleeding but felt hot and swollen. Infection was a real concern, especially the bite. Whatever else these creatures were, their mouths certainly contained bacteria. I needed to clean the wounds but had nothing to work with. The vial in my hand seemed to grow heavier as I considered it. Would it truly heal me as part of the transformation? Or would I die from infection before I even had to make my choice? The hide covering was pulled aside suddenly, and one of my guards entered. A smaller, gray-furred creature with a distinctly female appearance despite the monstrous features. She carried what appeared to be a crude wooden bowl containing clear water and some kind of poultice of crushed plants. Without speaking, she set these down beside me and gestured to my wounds. "You want to help me?" I asked, surprised. She nodded, those inhuman eyes watching me with an intelligence that remained deeply unsettling. I hesitated, then nodded back. She dipped a piece of clean-looking cloth into the water and began gently cleaning the bite wound on my arm. The cool water provided immediate relief from the burning sensation. "Thank you," I said quietly. She looked at me curiously, then spoke in a voice higher than the leader's, but with the same struggle to form human words. "Potential pack," she said simply. "Must be healthy for change." "So it's real then?" I held up the vial. "This will actually transform me." She nodded, applying the poultice to my wounds. It had a strong herbal smell and created a tingling sensation on contact. "Ancient magic," she said. "Stronger than bite." "Magic," I repeated skeptically, the scientist in me still resisting, despite everything I'd seen. She bared her teeth in what might have been amusement. "Your kind always doubts until the change comes? How many humans have joined you this way?" "Few," she admitted. "Last one, 20 winters past. Did not survive first hunt." That wasn't encouraging. "What happened?" "Human mind too strong. Fought the wolf inside. Must embrace both to survive." As she finished treating my wounds, I decided to risk more questions. "The leader said you can appear human. Is that true?" She nodded. "All but the ancient ones. They forget how. How does it work?" "The changing?" She touched her chest. "Inside, always both. Outside changes with will, with moon." She looked at me intently. "First changes hard. Moon forces them. Later, control comes. And you live among humans sometimes." "Some do. I prefer mountains." She stood, gathering her medical supplies. "Rest now. Decide soon." As she turned to leave, I asked, "What's your name?" She paused, seeming surprised by the question. "Sierra," she said finally. "Once human name. Long ago." After she left, I pondered our conversation. Sierra had once been human then. How long ago? How many others in the pack had been transformed rather than born to this existence? The vial seemed to grow heavier in my palm as the hours passed. My scientific training battled with what my eyes had seen, what my mind was beginning to accept. If this transformation was real, it defied everything I understood about biology, about the immutability of species. Yet I couldn't deny the evidence of my own experience. These creatures existed. They had language, society, medicine. They weren't simply animals, nor were they simply humans with a disease. They were something else entirely, and soon I would have to decide whether to join them. I must have dozed off again because I woke to the sound of commotion outside the shelter. Angry growls and snarls echoed through the cavern. I moved to the entrance. peering out between the hides. In the central circle, the pack had gathered again, but this time in apparent conflict. The leader stood facing another large werewolf, this one with silver-gray fur, while the others formed a tense circle around them. They were speaking that strange language, growls and snarls interspersed with occasional recognizable words. I caught human, forbidden, and challenge among the guttural sounds. Sierra appeared beside me suddenly, making me jump. "What's happening?" I whispered. "Eric challenges Darius," she said, nodding toward the confrontation. The silver werewolf was Eric, I assumed, and the leader was Darius. "Challenges him for what?" "Leadership," Sierra explained. "Eric says bringing human here breaks ancient law, says Darius grows weak, sentimental. This is about me," I realized. "The silver one, Eric, doesn't want me to join the pack." Sierra nodded grimly. "Eric believes humans are only prey. He lost his mate to hunters many seasons ago." The two massive werewolves circled each other now, hackles raised, fangs bared. The tension in the cavern was palpable. "What happens if Eric wins?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "You die," Sierra said simply. "Immediately." The fight erupted with explosive violence. Darius and Eric collided in the center of the circle, a blur of claws and fangs. The sound was deafening, snarls and roars echoing off the cavern walls as they tumbled across the stone floor. Eric seemed slightly larger, his silver fur standing out starkly against Darius's black coat. But Darius moved with greater precision, each strike calculated where Eric's attack seemed fueled by rage. Blood, that strange black substance, splattered across the stone as claws found their marks. The pack watched in complete silence, not a single member interfering or even appearing to breathe. "If Eric wins," I whispered to Sierra, "will you help me escape?" Her amber eyes flicked to mine briefly before returning to the fight. "Cannot. Pack law absolute." The battle continued with savage intensity. Both combatants were bleeding heavily now, their movements slowing. Then Eric made a crucial mistake, lunging with too much momentum, leaving his throat exposed for a fraction of a second. It was all Darius needed. His jaws clamped around Eric's throat with crushing force. The silver werewolf thrashed and struggled, but Darius held firm, driving him down to the stone floor. For several tense moments, they remained locked in that position. Darius with his teeth at Eric's throat, Eric growing progressively weaker as he struggled. Then, to my surprise, Darius released him. Eric lay panting on the stone, bleeding and defeated but alive. Darius stood over him, huffing from exertion, and growled something in their language. "What's happening?" I asked Sierra. "Why didn't he kill him?" "Darius offers mercy," she explained. "If Eric submits, acknowledges Darius as alpha again, he may live." The defeated werewolf seemed to struggle internally for a moment, pride battling survival instinct. Finally, he rolled onto his back, exposing his throat fully, a gesture of complete submission. Darius placed one massive paw on Eric's chest, growled something else, then stepped back, allowing the silver werewolf to rise shakily to his feet. The pack erupted in a chorus of howls that sent chills down my spine. The challenge was over. Darius remained alpha, which meant my choice still awaited me. As if reading my thoughts, Darius turned toward my shelter. Our eyes met across the cavern, and he beckoned with one clawed hand. Sierra nudged me gently. "Time to decide." Clutching the vial tightly, I stepped out of the shelter and walked across the cavern floor. The pack parted to let me pass, their eyes following my every move. Some looked curious, others hungry, a few openly hostile. I stopped before Darius, who was still bleeding from multiple wounds sustained in the fight. "Your time is up, Benjamin Cooper," he growled. "What is your decision?" I looked down at the vial in my hand, then back up at the circle of inhuman faces surrounding me. My entire scientific career had been dedicated to understanding wolves, their behavior, their place in the ecosystem. Now I was faced with a species, or subspecies, that no one in the scientific community believed existed. If I drank the vial and survived the transformation, I could learn about these creatures from the inside. I could document a society that had remained hidden for centuries, perhaps millennia. It would be the greatest zoological discovery in history, even if I could never publish it in a scientific journal. But I would no longer be human. Everything I knew, everyone I loved in the world above, would be lost to me. "I have questions," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. Darius tilted his massive head. "Ask. If I join you, am I bound to this pack forever? To this den?" A rumble of surprise ran through the gathered werewolves. Clearly, this wasn't a common question. "The pack is family," Darius said after a moment. "Protection, strength, but some choose solitude for times. Some even live among humans when necessary." His amber eyes narrowed. "But all return. All answer when the alpha calls." "And if I wanted to continue my research? My human work?" Now Eric growled from where he stood nursing his wounds. "See? Human mind will remain. He will betray us." Darius silenced him with a look before turning back to me. "Your human life must appear unchanged to avoid suspicion. Your research could continue, but your loyalty would be to the pack first." I nodded slowly, processing this. "One last question. The transformation, is it painful?" Sierra was the one who answered, stepping forward. "The most pain you will ever feel," she said honestly, "but brief. Death would be longer." I took a deep breath, looking down at the vial one final time. In the dim light of the cavern, the liquid seemed to move with a life of its own, swirling despite the stillness of my hand. Science couldn't explain what was happening here, but sometimes science began with observation of the impossible, followed by acceptance of new realities. I uncapped the vial. "I accept," I said, and before I could reconsider, I tipped the contents into my mouth. The liquid burned like fire and ice simultaneously, coating my tongue with a taste so bitter and ancient it defied description. I swallowed reflexively, feeling it sear a path down my throat to my stomach. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. The pack watched me intently, not a sound in the vast cavern. Then the pain hit. It began in my core, a twisting, tearing sensation that dropped me to my knees instantly. I tried to scream, but no sound emerged as every muscle in my body contracted simultaneously. My bones felt like they were shattering and reforming, my skin splitting and stretching. I collapsed fully to the stone floor, convulsing. Through eyes blurred with tears of agony, I saw the pack forming a tighter circle around me, watching dispassionately as I transformed. The pain intensified beyond anything I could have imagined possible. It was no longer localized. It was everywhere, in every cell, as though my DNA itself was being rewritten by force. My consciousness began to fragment, darkness closing in at the edges of my vision. Just before I blacked out completely, I heard Darius speak. "Welcome, brother." I awakened to new senses. The first thing I noticed was scent. Thousands of them, each distinct and information-rich. I could smell every member of the pack, their health, their emotions, their hierarchical status. I could smell the minerals in the stone around me, the distant fresh air from tunnels I hadn't known existed, even the lingering scent of my own humanity, now fading rapidly. Next came hearing, the breathing and heartbeats of 24 pack members, water dripping in distant passages, the subtle shifting of the mountain above us. When I opened my eyes, the dimly lit cavern appeared as bright as day, with colors I had no names for at the edges of the spectrum. I was lying on the furs in the same shelter, but everything had changed. I was changed. I lifted my hands, except they weren't hands anymore. They were massive paws, covered in dark brown fur, tipped with claws that looked capable of shredding steel. A sound escaped my throat, half whimper, half growl, as the reality of what had happened fully registered. I tried to stand, but my new body responded strangely, muscles and joints working differently than I was accustomed to. The hide covering was pushed aside, and Darius entered. He seemed smaller somehow, less terrifying now that I was closer to his size and strength. "The first transformation is complete," he said, his words now perfectly clear to me. What had sounded like guttural animal noises before now registered as a complex language. "How do you feel?" I tried to respond, but only growls emerged. Frustration welled within me. "Calm," Darius instructed. "Language will come. Think the words clearly." I focused, imagining the words forming in my mind before attempting to speak again. I feel strange, I managed finally. The words distorted but understandable. Good, Darius nodded. Many do not survive the first change. Your grandfather's blood has served you well? Sierra entered behind him, carrying another wooden bowl, this one containing raw meat that sent hunger tearing through me like nothing I'd ever experienced. Eat, she said, placing the bowl before me. Then we teach you to change back. I devoured the meat without hesitation, part of my mind horrified at my lack of disgust, the other part reveling in the rich taste and satisfying texture. When I finished, I felt stronger, more centered in my new body. Changing back, Darius explained, requires focus. Visualization. Remember your human form. Hold it in your mind. This seemed impossible. How could mere thought reverse such a profound physical transformation? Yet as I concentrated on the memory of my human body, I felt a tingling sensation begin in my extremities. The process was painful, though less intense than the initial transformation. It felt like my new form was being compressed, condensed back into human proportions. Bones shifted, fur receded, claws retracted into normal fingernails. When it was complete, I lay gasping on the furs, naked and human-shaped once more, but forever changed inside. I could still smell everything, still hear the distant dripping water, still see with unnatural clarity. And there was something else, a presence in my mind that hadn't been there before, something wild and ancient and not entirely me. The wolf, Darius said, recognizing my expression. It will always be there now, not separate, a part of you. In time, you will no longer distinguish between it and yourself. Sierra had thoughtfully brought my torn clothing, cleaned of blood. I dressed shakily, still adjusting to being bipedal again. What happens now, I asked, my voice strange in my ears after speaking as a werewolf. Now you learn, Darius said. Hunt with us tonight. Tomorrow return to your human world. Maintain appearances. Return on the full moon. You will have no choice then. The call will be too strong to resist. And my research? Continue it, he said. But remember where your true loyalty lies now. That night, I ran with the pack through tunnels that opened onto the mountainside far from my burned cabin. We emerged under a star-filled sky, the waning moon casting silver light across the snow-covered landscape. In werewolf form again, I experienced the hunt as I never could have as a human. We moved as one organism, communicating without sound, sharing each other's perceptions. I discovered speed and strength beyond anything I could have imagined, scaling cliffs that would have required technical climbing gear in my human form, leaping chasms that would have been impossible before. We brought down an elk, and I participated in the feeding without hesitation, the wolf in my mind rejoicing at the primal feast. Afterward, we howled together, a sound that carried for miles across the wilderness, announcing our presence to a world that had forgotten we existed. By dawn, I had begun to understand what I had become. Not a monster as I had first thought, but something more complex, a bridge between two worlds, with the strengths of both. Darius led me to within a mile of where my truck had been parked. Your human life resumes here, he said. Remember our laws? Protect the pack's secret. Hunt only wild game, never humans. I understand, I replied, finding the werewolf language easier now. 1 month, he reminded me. The full moon will bring you back to us. I shifted back to human form, dressed in spare clothes I kept in my truck, and walked back to civilization with a foot in two worlds. In the month that followed, I maintained my human existence. I reported the destruction of my cabin as an accident, a wood stove fire that got out of control. I continued my research, now with an understanding of wolf behavior that no other biologist could possibly possess. And I prepared for the inevitable return to the pack when the full moon rose. That was 2 years ago. I still live this double life, respected wildlife biologist by day, werewolf by night, especially when the moon is full. My research has been published in leading journals, ironically establishing me as one of the foremost experts on wolf behavior in North America. The irony isn't lost on me. I've learned to control the transformations, to embrace both sides of my nature. I've earned a place in the pack hierarchy, even helping bridge the divide between Darius and Eric, whose hatred of humans has softened somewhat through my example. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice that night in the cavern. Then I run with the pack under the Montana stars, experiencing the wilderness with senses no human will ever know. And I have my answer. I am Benjamin Cooper. I am a scientist. I am a werewolf. And the mountains of Montana belong to me in ways no human could ever understand.